Holden getting underneath. Maltz, great catch by Bernhardt. Score! Hello, highlight reel.
Play like a champion today. Notre Dame with its first title in men's lacrosse.
Hello, College Lacrosse Game Day fans. A lot of huge games this week to get to, so we brought in Dan Arestia to help talk about our games of the week. But first, joining us is Kyle Smith and Matt Dooley for Cornell. Kyle picked up the ground ball. Matt Dooley canned it. We're going to interview them right after this shot clock section. Let's go.
Thursday, March 14th, the Dartmouth Big Green get a big win over Vermont, 11-10.
Friday, March 15th, Navy shocks Hopkins with a 10-9 overtime win. Max Hewitt must listen to Steely Dan on the brutal commute to Homewood because he went back jack and did it again.
Saturday, March 16th, Bucknell Buck fell to Colgate by 13 goals, 17-4.
Penn makes Brown's shorts match their jerseys. Quakers win 11-6. Carroll, 16 saves, quietly becoming one of the nation's top goalies.
Vermont humbly ends NJIT's unforgettable 7-0 run. The score was 12-9.
Griffin Schutt's elbows were naked but not afraid Saturday. He had 6 points. Virginia 14, Maryland 10.
The Maize and Blue look dazed and confused. Notre Dame wins St. Patty's Day weekend 19-9 over Michigan.
The Nittany Lions avenge last year's loss to Marquette. They win 13-7 with a dozen different point scorers.
LIU gave an IOU to Mount in the form of a 13-6 butt whipping.
13-9 ASUN win for Jacksonville over Bobby Moe. 3-game Fin streak for the Fish.
Syracuse escapes the trap game. The Orange pop Delaware like vitamin D, 14-6.
Linden woulda, coulda, shoulda on Saturday. ASUN lost to Cleveland State 10-7.
Air Force flies over Queens like the Royal Flying Corps over Buckingham Palace, 14-10.
Pratt Reynolds and the Saints secure an 11-8 win over VMI. Hey, Mac Conference, Siena waits for you.
Knobloch rocked his socks off with 3 goals in Rutgers, 10-9 win over UMass.
First Patriot League victory for Lafayette comes against the Holy Cross Checkers, 17-8.
The net worth in Reese Stadium on Saturday could have ended world hunger. Harvard was hungry, but Yale scored from 70 to make it 17-15 Bulldogs.
The Duke Blue Devils were the Richmond south of Richmond over the weekend. They taxed the Spiders to no end, 12-3 win.
The Red Foxes are too quick and too sly for Canisius. Marist wins 20-16.
If you see a terrier humping a greyhound, best you just let him finish. BU went up 4-0 to start against Loyola and controlled the whole game, 12-10 final.
The Great Danes show Lowell who the big dog is. Albany wins 19-8.
If you're getting your deck ready for spring, have Carter Page come finish it for you. He might be the best in the business. St. Joe's 15, St. John's 8.
Quinnipiac on track to own the MAC in dominant fashion, putting Wagner aside 14-8.
Despite 19 saves from Wilk, Stony Brook falls to UNC 12-8. This ends the Tar Heels' Long Island trip. Those programs must forgive them. They're up and gone to Carolina.
Holy crapola, Justin Capola goes 75% at the X for Nova. They beat Monmouth 12-11.
2-0 max start for Sacred Heart. I just gambled on a fart. Turned out to be a shark. I'm sorry. Pioneers 14, Manhattan 12.
Hobart sends Lemoyne home 20-9. Anthony DeTalis has 8 points for the Fellas.
The Stags deserve some love after a 12-11 CAA win Saturday over Hofstra. Lynch and Adams hold it down defensively.
Towson's Josh Weber was cooking like the grill with 5 points in their win over Drexel 16-10.
Mercer 17, Mercy 11. The Titans are 0-5. Coach Herman Boone may have to run those boys down to Gettysburg and tell them what happened.
OT. Brian loses to UMBC. It was 12-13. Nick Gutierrez scored the game winner in that one.
Wild one in Binghamton, New York. 5 goals in the last 7 minutes brings us to overtime, and it's Casey Mongillo who gives Merrimack the 10-9 conference victory.
Utah crawled out of a 7-goal hole with Bellarmine and jousted with the Knights to a 14-13 victory.
Enemy nations must be shaking in their boots watching Army neutralize opponents every weekend. Lehigh waves the white flag, 18-12 West Point.
Sunday, March 17th, it was past high school teammates Matt Dooley and Kyle Smith to seal the deal in Cornell's win at Princeton, 15-14.
Ohio State falls to Denver 9-6. Buckeyes have lost 4 of their last 5. The program is beginning to look like an at-large resume builder for their opponents.
Tuesday, March 19th, Georgetown takes Dartmouth to Browntown with a commanding 21-9 win.
Virginia, Albany, Tuesday night, 3-0 start for the Danes. This was tied at halftime. Nevertheless, on horseback, the Cavaliers rode to victory, 16-10.
Villanova throws Navy overboard 14-7. Good thing the midshipmen can swim with cinder blocks tied to their ankles.
The Philly crown was stolen by the Talons of the Hawks Tuesday night. After 3 consecutive years of 1-goal losses in this matchup, St. Joe's puts a beating on Pennsylvania, 12-7.
Wednesday, March 20th, the Knights of Bellarmine romp over Mercer 17-9, fuel the fire after Utah.
On Pac-12 Network, Air Force breaks the hard deck. They defeat ASUN preseason favorite Utah, 12-11.
Lindenwood are not the kings of the jungle. They are the runts of the litter. They beat Queens, beats them 8-3.
Detroit Mercy at RMU. We patiently wait the result of that game.
And Duke at Syracuse.
And Cornell gets it back. Oh boy. Gilmartin's out in front. Matt Dooley. It's the chess match.
Matt, Kyle, thank you guys so much for joining the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Produced. Yeah, this is an awesome opportunity, especially what happened on Sunday at Princeton. I want to ask you about the play, but I have a feeling you're going to give me a shitty answer, so I'll ask you about the game first. Princeton's a great team. A lot to prepare for, a lot of versatility offensively. You both defensive guys. So going into that game, I guess, what were you guys thinking? And just telling me a little bit about what happened Sunday.
Yeah, sure. So, coming into the game, we knew they were super athletic, a lot of young guys. And, the weekend before, we lost to Penn State pretty heavily. And so, going into practice last week, we really focused on just playing more team ball and, focusing, within instead of, focusing more on our opponents. And, throughout the week, we kind of gelled more together as a team. And, I kind of think that's what helped us against Princeton.
Definitely. Yeah. Go ahead, Dooley. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add kind of going in with like a confident mindset. We knew they were a good team, but we were confident in ourselves and kind of just an aggressive mentality. Like, we're not going to let them come to us, kind of go out and throw the first punch and go at them. So, it kind of worked out for us. So we're going to try and continue doing that for sure.
Totally. And in terms of throwing things at them, you certainly were aggressive. Coach was not passive in this matchup. And at the end of the game there, you guys snapped into a zone, which I think some people were kind of surprised to see. But did you see something specific in Princeton's offense where you thought maybe a zone could throw them off? Or was it more of a kind of, let's come out of a timeout with something different and see if we can get a look defensively?
Yeah, honestly, not too sure. But I think it was more just to surprise them, to show them something different, something that they haven't seen all game. Because they were beating their man a lot, and so we kind of wanted to throw a zone at them, throw them off a bit.
I love it. And I think just to bring up the play, because it was awesome. Kyle, you pick up that ball, and it's short time. And if you watch the play duels, you start streaking immediately up the field. So Kyle first, tell me what you're thinking when you pick that ball up, and then duels, just a creature running down the field. Tell us about the play.
Yeah, so honestly, the first thought I had when I picked up the ball was that we probably only had 3 seconds left. But, thank God their scoreboard was right to my right. So I looked up at it, saw 10 seconds, and,
Nice.
I saw Dooley going upfield as fast as he could, and I just, threw him a ball. Not the best ball in the world.
Scintillating rope over to midfield.
It was a bounce pass. It was a bounce pass.
Yeah, bounce pass. Yeah, exactly. And, thank God he caught it.
And then, I knew Kyle was going to pick that thing up. It's similar to basketball, like just kind of running the floor, getting up. So I actually, when he picked it up, I was able to glance up at the scoreboard and I saw 10.9. So I knew it was going to be like, we were going to get a shot off on this possession. It was going to be the last play of the game. So I just kind of got upfield. Honestly, the bounce pass was totally fine. I just dropped right into my stick. And then as I was running down, you can see on the film, but Luke Gilmartin's ahead of me. I honestly didn't even see him. I kind of just had tunnel vision. I was more looking for Mikey Long on the wing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I didn't really want to shoot it going into it. I was trying to draw that top defenseman and then dish it off. And you can kind of see I do like a kind of a little pump fake where I want to throw it and he doesn't come. And then I was kind of like, well, I'm close to the net now. There's probably 3-4 seconds left. I got to just let it fly. And I got hit as I shot it too, which I honestly think kind of helped the shot a little bit. It kind of moved it off the goalie's shoulder, but I didn't even know it went in at first. And then I just heard the crowd erupt, and then, Kyle was jumping on me. All the guys were jumping on me. So it was a pretty awesome moment.
I have goosebumps. That's so fucking cool, dude. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That was a way better answer than we anticipated.
No, and to get it from Kyle, like he came into the pile, he's like LS. So
That's awesome.
It was just like really, really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to pull on that thread a little bit. What a lot of people probably don't know is you guys played high school ball together at Lincoln-Sudbury with myself and Brett. Obviously, we take a lot of pride in our high school program, more so than most folks in the lacrosse world, I will say. But just talk a little bit about your experience at Lincoln-Sudbury with that program, preparing you to play at a program like Cornell, which also prides culture, toughness, and all the things we take dearly at Lincoln-Sudbury. But just want to let you guys talk about both those cultures for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, definitely playing at LS, made both Dooley and I way tougher. From all the off-season lifts in the morning to the really tough practices. You see that every day at Cornell. It's really tough practices, a lot of lifts, a lot of conditioning, and taught us to be better people and better players, and just tougher people overall. But that's all I got for.
Just Kyle hit it on the head, but that's what the similarities between LS and here. That's what kind of drew us both to Cornell, like. Attention to details, both on and off the field, leaving it better than you found it. Just kind of that gritty, hard, blue collar work ethic that we kind of experienced at LS. Being pushed to our limits in high school kind of prepared us for Cornell, and both kind of drew us to this place. So it's really kind of cool to experience it together. A lot of similarities between LS and Cornell here.
Yeah, it's clear to tell, and it's fun to watch too. Shout out Coach Vana, Coach Juice, Coach BB, all those guys who I hope listen, and they'll be getting some shit if they don't. So
Probably not.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But I want to talk about your season here before we wrap up. I've always just been curious as a team like Cornell in terms of your outlook on the season. I played at Hobart, and it's pretty much you got to win your conference if you want a chance to get in the dance. With you guys, it's a little bit different where you can certainly get in that large bid. And after a tough loss against Penn State like you had the week before, not looking great, but then you come back with a huge win against Princeton. You have some big games left in conference and out of conference. I think you guys played Notre Dame in New York City later in the year. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's
on Long Island, actually.
Long Island. Okay, close. But like... But rest of the year, Yale's a huge game this week. They just had a big win against Harvard. Just talk about your outlook for the rest of the season, and then thinking about even May lacrosse as well.
Yeah, sure. Our schedule really isn't that easy this year. Every game is a great opponent. But we're in the mindset right now where you got to just focus on, one day at a time. So right now we're just, obviously focusing on tomorrow and focus on Yale, because when you get in the mindset of looking down the road and seeing the other opponents that you're playing, you kind of get lost. And so right now we're kind of just working on focusing on, one day at a time and just focusing on our next opponent.
Yeah, exactly what Kyle said again. At this level, every game matters. So it's, not get after the Penn State loss, not getting too low, and then after the Princeton game, not getting too high, trying to stay level-headed. And honestly, like as you're looking towards the end of the season, that's kind of the time you want to be peaking. That's when you want to be gelling the most as a team. So I think we're just striving every day to continue to be that that best version of ourselves in May when, a lot's on the line.
Totally. And we look forward to watching you guys the rest of the way and hopefully through May. Awesome finish and exciting for us to watch. Goosebumps watching that for Cornell fans, I'm sure, as well as Lincoln-Sudbury lacrosse fans and hopefully now college lacrosse game day fans. So we appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. Thanks. And Brett, thank you guys for having us.
Thanks, fellas. I appreciate it.
Take care. Good luck this week against Yale.
All right.
See ya.
Awesome having those guys on. Couple things. One, shout out Coach Tim Jason, synonymous with Lincoln-Sudbury lacrosse defense. Legend. Miss you, Coach. 2, make sure to like and follow us on Spotify. It's huge for our show. 3, that goal came on Ondo Day. Ondo is a trainer for Lincoln-Sudbury, passed away a few years ago. Served as athletic trainer at Lincoln-Sudbury for 33 years, I believe. Impacted a lot of people, a huge part of the lacrosse program there, and why it's held dearly to so many people's heart. Had to make sure I get that in because it is important. But now we're sitting here Wednesday night. We just finished watching Duke-Syracuse, and we're talking a little bit about this Syracuse defensive coordinator who's done an exceptional job at the helm thus far, and that performance defensively tonight was a privilege to watch.
Yeah, it was really good. And John O'Dearna is proving why he's the right guy for the job. Little context, he was the Manhattan head coach last year. He got brought in as a DC this offseason. But at Manhattan, he won the MAC last year, which is a tough conference to win, especially if you're Manhattan. He kind of brought that program to the forefront of the MAC, and he brought them to the NCAA tournament, which is a huge deal. And, it's really nice to see like a head coach, maybe taking a step down as a DC. I don't really think it's a step down. I think going from the Manhattan head coach to the Syracuse DC is a promotion. And it's great to see that he's doing such a good job there and that he is the right guy for the job.
The ACC is big time. It's probably not a step down, but I know some people do think that. But I would say, like you said, man, he brought a Cuse team, a perennial powerhouse, a blue blood. They brought their defense back. I don't remember in my lifetime a great defense. At least, I know some great names. I remember some great cover guys that went through there, but not a great defense. And he might have really brought the X's and O's and leadership to this squad. And again, I can't believe they held Duke to 4. That's just so hard to do. That is so hard to do. And to hold Brendan O'Neill to, I believe it was 2 points, 1-1, right? It just seems like teams, I don't think he's playing poorly. I just don't, because he's so talented. I just think that like people are maybe starting to figure it out, maybe schematically, or maybe there's just a specific type of cover guy who is a good matchup against him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to put it in context, Duke has the number 1 offense in the country. They score 18 goals a game, which is far more than, or it's a couple goals more than the second. And their winning margin is 9. They win games by 9 goals on average, which is by far the top scoring margin in the country. And I think the next one is like 4 or 5. I'm not sure who it is, but probably an ACC team. But Duke has been pounding teams on the offensive side of the ball.
Some good teams.
They have, yep.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just a hiccup for them, but we'll see. As it's going to be awesome when those teams start playing each other every single weekend. Some games we want to talk about in our recap section. Quick, Navy Hopkins. I don't think anyone saw this coming.
No.
In a miserable commute for Navy.
Miserable.
Did you hear what happened?
Oh yeah, a couple buses crashed.
The first bus, like you can't even make this shit up. The first bus broke down, or it was like on fire. They got a replacement bus, and then
That got hit by like a car on the way there. And then the third one broke down, and then the fourth one came.
and then Bonnets picked up the next bus, carried it to home.
The captain of captains. That's what he would do.
No, they got in a boat and finished the ride by
they
water.
His side of the road.
They had to get a bus delivered on in an aircraft carrier.
I think
helicopters dropped it off.
we kind of were talking about it, but it's like Hopkins is downward trending, and also just Navy too. They're so inconsistent. When they're good, they are good.
So inconsistent.
They smack BU. Then they lose to Lehigh. Then they beat Hopkins at Homewood. Then they get doubled up by Villanova the following week.
Yeah.
So it's like when this team shows up, they're great. When they don't, they're not great. But it's like, what does that tell you about Hopkins though?
Yeah. I mean, my big takeaway from this game was that Hopkins looked scared. Like, they had so many opportunities in transition to be aggressive, push the ball, and especially late in the game when they really needed a little jolt. Like, it felt like no one wanted to be the guy to make a mistake. And they had so many opportunities, so many like 5-on-4, 4v4 breaks where they had a chance to attack and they didn't. They just kind of held it, pulled it out, and it's like the clock is ticking and you're down 1 or 2. Like, you need to get something going. And it just felt like they were scared to make a mistake.
Yeah, and Hopkins, they're 5-3. And I think the record, that's when you think of Hopkins specifically this year, you don't think of 5-3, but they're 5-3. I'm optimistic about that team. One play says it all to me. Scott Smith, early on in the game, I think first half, just throws his body in front of a shot, takes one right in the spleen, it looked like. But you can't say they don't play hard. You can't say they don't care. They're a good group. I think they're going to figure it out. They have a lot of great games ahead of them. At Large is still in contention, but they got to play well against some great teams. Some games I want to get to in the recap. Ivy League opens up in some awesome Game 1 contests. Obviously, we just went through that interview with Dooley and Smith. Great win for Cornell.
Great.
Yale also down 5 starters against Harvard. Finds a way to get it done. They win by 2 at their place. We had the privilege of going to that game.
Boots on the ground.
Yeah, walking
Dan,
past.
I want to ask you about that atmosphere real quick. You know, obviously a beautiful venue,
Beautiful
day,
sunny,
it was packed.
Right.
From the pictures you sent, what was it like?
Yeah, let me paint a picture for you. So you get there.
Painted Picasso.
Yep, you get there. So you pay for parking, and you know, tap. Sure, whatever it costs, I'll park. And then
please,
you get there. It's Range Rover, BMW. It's
Ivy League.
All the nicest cars. I could have sworn I saw Josiah walking into the facility, but no. All jokes aside, like you don't realize how many people are there until you're there, and it's just an awesome atmosphere to be in. If you go on Instagram, I tried to take some videos of the facility. I felt like a 58-year-old father, the index finger on the screen, just scanning the whole facility, like, check this out. And
it wasn't a great video, but it got the point across.
It was great.
It was good.
All I'll say from watching the game for me, somebody who wasn't boots on the ground, is Sam King is a great player. 8 points, Harvard attackman. It looks like, from games I've watched, that he's a hard guy to cover, and he gets in that top wing dodge with a pick. He's too much speed, and he can fucking find the net, man. So he's a player to watch later in the year.
Yeah, and some other good contests this weekend. Virginia's just too much for, Virginia's just too much for Maryland. Griffin shots look great. I thought Schellenberger had one of his best games of the year. When you watch him dodge and you watch him go to the cage, he is relentless, and athletically, I don't think there's a lot of guys in college lacrosse who compare to him.
Tour in conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Virginia. When you look at their 6 guys on the field, they have 6 guys on the field every single possession that can create offense, right? And they can all score goals, but Virginia just creates offense. Like, Schellenberger just draws the whole attention of the defense, it feels like. Cormier is just an unbelievable shooter and finisher. Griffin Schutz is a beast of a midi. Jack Boyden gets 4 points a game. McCabe Millen is, a really good dodger, right? They just have guys all over the field.
A list of
guys. It's a list. And
it's
then,
almost, you know how to pull.
Yeah. And then it's like, you look at Maryland, and my takeaway from that game was that they didn't have that same list of players that can create like Virginia does. It felt like they relied a lot on one-on-one, and they had some good dodges and got some offense there, and they got some offense in transition, but they just don't have that list of guys that you can look to for a goal or to create offense. And, I think that's going to be something going forward that they're going to have to figure out. They are coached by John Tillman, who is, a top 3 coach in college lacrosse.
Absolutely.
And, they do play a very like cohesive style of offense where they move the ball real well and all that, but they need some playmakers. And it felt like the guys they rely on, like Urksa and Molliver and Spanos even, they can do that, but then who's next in that line,
Yeah, we don't know yet is the answer. And you'll hear from Dan Arestia. He has a similar take. You're talking about coaching there for a second. Just one more thing from this Yale-Harvard game. First time watching Jared Byrne coach live, like, he is a teacher of lacrosse. Like, just seeing him communicate with his players is so cool because he's Like it's individual. It's one-on-one, and you can tell he's not yelling at them. He's teaching them. And it was just cool to watch because I've heard, tall tales about Jerry Byrne for years and finally getting to see him in person. Before Brett gets into the All Guts, No Glory section, I want to give you a little, foresight on what we're going to be doing with the podcast moving forward. So we're diving into conference play. So what we want to do is paint a picture of these conferences and what's happening within them, because these teams are beginning to play some big games in their records for 80%, maybe even 90% of the country. Their overall records aren't as important now. What's important is winning in the conference. For example, NGIT, they go 7-0. They lose to Vermont. Really, they go from 7-0 to 0-1. Their record's 0-1 now. So that's important. We want to make sure we highlight that. So after this week, we're going to begin to organize this by conference and talk about all the games and give you conference standings moving forward. Just want to make that clear as we move forward. But Brett, there are some other stories we want to make sure we cover this week before we jump into our Week 7 slate.
Thank you for the clarity, Dan. That was very helpful.
Of course.
All Guts, No Glory. We'll start with Rutgers beating UMass 10-9. It doesn't shock me that this was a close game. All things aside, really this was a goalie battle. Carden Stoller for Rutgers, he had 19 saves. Matt Nody had 16 for UMass. Solid play between the pipes really just emphasizes the other necessary elements of the game, which really happened, especially at a neutral site game. I think the crowd was like 1,500 people, a little bit smaller for a standout in both original stadiums. But I think this is a great prep game for Big Ten play for Rutgers. St. Joe's finally beats Penn. St. Joe's is 2-17 all time against the Quakers. Really a pleasure to watch this game, because not just the sheer beauty here, but St. Joe's came out swinging. We haven't seen them do that in a little bit. 7-2 early in the game. They're a big physical team. They have skilled guys north of the border that can really score goals. Carter Page, Torrin Eccleston, and Levi Anderson all had 2 or more. In this one, goaltender Tommy Gross had 15 saves. A lot of pipes, a lot of unlucky bounces for Penn, but 6 of those saves were in the fourth quarter, which is huge. Penn was number 12 in the country coming into this game. Not sure how they'll exit, but a great game nonetheless. Utah comes back from down 7 against Bellarmine for the ASUN victory. This is,
was the third win in a row.
It was the third win in a row. Vermont, Marquette, Bellarmine. The Utes are 3-3.
They're 3-4 after
3-4.
A loss today.
Yeah, so Utah was relentless. They were cockroaches. You couldn't kill them. In the third quarter, they were down 10-5. They scored 2 unanswered. In the fourth quarter, down 12-8, they scored 6 to Bellarmine's 1. It was Ryan Steins, the redshirt freshman, who delivered that final blow, but really loved the fight in this team. I will be in Salt Lake City this weekend skiing, and I will try to make my way to their game against Mercer.
Would be exciting. And just another reminder, because we need it, go like and follow the podcast. Thanks so much. Now time for our Week 7 slate. This is presented by Omaha Steaks. Some crazy stuff happened though on our social account. So we're very interactive with Omaha Steaks Instagram account.
And Twitter.
And Twitter, right? We'll comment GIFs.
How could you not be?
Right. They have an excellent, whoever does that, bang up job. But we're constantly on their case, just messing with them, just hooting and hollering, just staying in their business. But anyways, we get a DM from someone called Meatman Mafia on Instagram because of our shenanigans, and we look into his account, and I don't know what he does. I don't know if he sells meats, but he has like a bunch of ads. Meatman Mafia, super delicious steak at 10% off your first order using code Grillmaster, and there's like no link to anything. Steak box, 8 filet mignon, 4 ribeyes, 2 T-bones, 4 New York strips, 6 strip steaks, 12 steak burgers, $200. There's no links to anything.
That sounds
a lot of
great.
meat.
Where
He's
do
a
I
meat
sign
man.
up?
I DM'd him. I said, "Hi, Meat Man, can you tell us about your business?" And he saw the message and he didn't respond. He has 32 followers, 9 posts. Hey, Meat Man, if you're listening,
Yeah.
Show us the meats.
show us the meat.
Please send us a trial package. I mean,
That sounded like a steal. $200 for.
It's a hefty load.
Yeah, dude.
You
That's
know,
a semi-full.
you know who wouldn't do this? Pull this bullshit?
Who?
Omaha Steaks.
Omaha Steaks.
They know exactly what
They're
they're
the gold
giving you.
standard.
They're consummate gifts for any
Yeah.
professional.
They're the class of steaks.
I don't think that the meat mafia man has given us a nice styrofoam, perfectly square, excellent freezer capacity.
It probably comes in like a plastic bag on your porch or something.
That's been barely at 40 degrees Fahrenheit.
There's a guy on a bike who just whips it out in a Ziploc bag.
He has to watch you eat it.
He just slings it onto your porch, hoping that the juice doesn't explode out of the bag.
I have a styrofoam cooler that I'm juiced to use all summer long.
Yep.
So
Giveaway? Should we give away the
cooler?
yeah?
All-purpose cooler.
There's probably rats living in that thing. It's been on our deck for a while.
Possum.
Anywho, thanks Omaha Steaks. We're going to dive into the games. We're starting with Friday, March 22nd. Some good games tonight. 2 games. One of them is one of our games of the week, so we're going to hold off. We talk about that with Dan Arestia. That'll be later in the pod. That's Army at BU, big Patriot League matchup. The other game is UMass at Brown. This one's at 3 p.m. on Friday.
Yeah, Brown is now 0-6 with that loss to Penn last week. They're winless, and that's very surprising because Brown's a good team. They're well coached. They recruit real well. This is a game that they could win, which is hard to say with a winless team. But UMass is 4-3. They lost to Rutgers 10-9 last week. They're a very tough team and do have some great wins. But I expect this to be low scoring, and I think UMass is going to win. I think Brown's going to find that win later on in the season, but not here.
Moving on to Saturday now, March 23rd, have some great games. 11 o'clock game, Manhattan 1.5 goal favorites at Canisius. Manhattan 1-1 in the MAC, Canisius 2-0. Good conference game. Next is Bellarmine 9.5 goal favorites at Queens. Bellarmine 1-1 in the conference. Queens is coming off an 8-3 win over Lindenwood, bringing them to 1-1 in the ASUN. So this should be a good one. We have Yale at Cornell. That's a 12 noon game. We're going to talk about it later. But then we have Penn, Sylvania, 7 goal favorites at Dartmouth. Pennsylvania coming off a tough loss Tuesday night.
That they are. Both teams played on Tuesday, so quick turnaround for the Saturday game. This feels like a big prove-it game for Dartmouth for the Ivy League. Maybe this shows that they won't be finishing last this year. Hoorah. Big Green, hopefully. But hey, Penn is 45-20 over Dartmouth all time. Penn is 1-0 in the Ivy League. They beat Brown 11-6, but they are coming off that tough loss to St. Joe's, who is a great, solid A-10 team, but still a tough loss, 12-7. Dartmouth is 3-4. They're coming off a 21-9 shellacking by Georgetown. I would like to say Penn is vulnerable right now after getting handled by St. Joe's, but geez, man, Dartmouth just really isn't giving themselves a case here.
Robert Morris, 2.5 goal favorites at Cleveland State. This one's at 12 noon. Robert Morris just beat Detroit Mercy in overtime. They're 1-1 in the ASUN. Then Cleveland State's 1-0 in the ASUN. They're actually on a 3-game win streak. They're playing pretty well. Hofstra at Delaware, CAA game. Delaware, 7.5 goal favorites. This one's at noon.
Yeah, good color battle here. Hofstra 8-goal underdogs in this one. Hofstra lost a tight one to Fairfield. They're currently 3-5. Not a great showing in that game. Delaware's 3-3. They're 50-50 covering the spread so far this season. I think the Hens will win this one, but I don't know if it's by 8.
Loyola, 2-goal favorites at Lafayette, 12 noon. Patriot League matchup here. Loyola 12-0 all-time against Lafayette. This should be more competitive. The Greyhounds are 0-2 in Patriot League. They just lost a tight game to BU. Lafayette is 4-3, 1-2 in Patriot League, coming off their first win in the Patriot League, 17-8 over, I believe it was Holy Cross.
Sounds right.
Lafayette won. Yep. Princeton at Harvard. Great game, 12 noon.
Yeah, number 16 Harvard is 6-1. They played number 14 Princeton, who is 4-3. For Harvard, they got Sam King, who's averaging a little over 6 points a game. A couple other studs in Graham Blake, and some other guys, in that 2 or 3 goal per game range. Princeton is, a very interesting team this year. They have some great wins against UNC and Rutgers. Colter McAsee is obviously the headliner there. But this game's going to come down to discipline, I think. And Harvard doesn't really, have a win like Princeton under their belt just yet. But Harvard thus far has been a more disciplined team. They have a better clearing percentage. They, have more assists per game, lower turnover rate. I like Harvard in this one, and I think it's going to be a packed house in Cambridge. We will probably have boots on the ground for this one, which, $15 parking, whatever. Probably a $30 ticket.
Yep.
God help us, but this is going to be a great atmosphere. If you're in the Boston area, go to this game if you can.
I wonder what Jerry Byrne does with all the money. I don't know. Just curious. Wagner at Mount. Mount St. Mary's 3.5 goal favorites in this one. 12 noon MAC game. Wagner 1-1 in the conference. Mount is 0-2. Mount's actually 0-8 on the season, which is surprising. Jacksonville 5.5 goal favorites at Mercer. 12 noon.
Jacksonville is 12-2 all time against Mercer. They beat them 18-15 in a shootout last year. This does feel like a game. If Mercer can win this game, they could maybe assert themselves at the top, of that ASUN conference. It kind of is up in the air, but Jacksonville, they are 1-0 in the ASUN, beating the 2022 ASUN champions, Robert Morris, 13-9 last. Mercer is 1-1 in the ASUN. They are coming off a tough 17-9 loss to Bellarmine, who is a good team, but still a tough loss nonetheless. They did beat Detroit Mercy 17-11. I do believe that Jacksonville's 3-game win streak is going to become a 4-game fin streak.
Out of conference matchup here, St. Joe's 3.5 goal favorites at Providence. St. Joe's is 4-3 over Providence all time, beating them 19-6 last season. St. Joe's slow start, but they're off to a great 4-game win streak against Air Force, Drexel, St. John's, and now probably their biggest win of the year over Penn, 12-7. Providence is 4-4, coming off a tough loss last week to Duke. A American East matchup should be a great one. UMBC at Merrimack. Both these teams coming off overtime wins last week.
Absolutely. UMBC is now 2-3. They haven't really beaten anybody notable besides Bryant. Merrimack's 3-5. They're really just lacking that production we expected from them as a group. They are both 1-0 in America East play. This should be pretty gritty, and I think it should be pretty even between these two teams.
Sacred Heart 2-goal favorites at VMI. This is a very important MAC matchup. Just pulling up the standings here very quick. Sacred Heart is 2-0 in the MAC. VMI is 0-2 in the MAC. Apologize there. This should be a great game. Monmouth at Stony Brook. Stony Brook 6-goal favorites. 12 noon.
Yeah, this is a big CAA matchup, and the CAA is a conference that gets overlooked. It's actually a very tough conference as it stands right now. Towson, Delaware, Fairfield, and Stony Brook are all 1-0. Drexel, Monmouth, Hampton, and Hofstra are all 0-1. In terms of this game, Stony Brook is 3-5. They have an unbelievable home schedule. They've played UNC, Rutgers, Penn State, and Providence at home, which they've all lost. But they are a good team with a lot of firepower. I don't think, we talk about Dylan Palinetti, but they also have guys like Noah Armitage, who's going to be a PLL draft pick, and Nick Dupuis, who is another senior attackman who's scoring like 5 or 6 goals a game. Monmouth is a team that's 3-4. They lost to Villanova 12-11 last week, which is actually a pretty good loss. They are 5-2 against the spread. So they are playing a lot of good teams like Delaware, Princeton, and Villanova very close. So I think Stony Brook has a lot of firepower here, and I think they're due for a win at home. But you don't know with these conference matchups. CAA is an important conference. This is an important game. I like Stony Brook, but expect it to be close.
Definitely St. John's at Lemoyne. Lemoyne's a 1.5 goal favorite in this game. This is also at noon. St. John's is 2-7. Lemoyne is 2-4. This would be a big win for either program, so that should be a good out-of-conference game. Towson 6.5 goal favorites at Fairfield. More CAA action. We move on to our 1 o'clock games.
Yeah, as Hayden mentioned, the CAA is a tough conference top to bottom. Towson is 8-1 all time against their CAA foe, Fairfield. They are 1-0 in the conference, coming off a 16-11 win over a solid Drexel team. They are 4-1 as favorites this year. That is something to consider, considering the 6.5 spread here. They're led offensively by senior attackman Nick DeMeo, with 43 points on the year, and sophomore midi Mikey Weishar, who has 34 points and has been really impressive as an initiator of their offense. Fairfield is also 1-0 in the CAA, coming off a solid and close 12-11 win over Hofstra, who is led by senior attackman and sophomore midi Bryce Ford and Will Consoli. I do believe Towson will win this game, but I do think Fairfield will cover and make it a tight matchup.
An American East game, Binghamton at NJIT. Tech, a 1.5 goal favorite, 1 p.m. game. NJIT falls to 7-1. Their historic run comes to an end. It's a sad day for Tech fans.
It really is.
And as mentioned in our recap, the reality for them is they go from 7-0 to 0-1. They need to win this conference if they want to make the tournament. God knows they're not getting an at-large bid. Quinnipiac still undefeated, 1.5 goal favorite at Marist, 1 p.m. game.
Yeah, big MAC matchup here. Solid start for both of them. Quinnipiac 6-0, Marist 4-3. This is definitely a game we could see again in the tournament. Quinnipiac is a 2-goal favorite. I feel good about them covering that. Great goalie play has really kept them into the season. Their offense has been playing pretty confident because of that. Brothers Ryan and Dylan Donnery continuing to put up great numbers, 27 and 26 points respectively. I feel good about Quinnipiac.
Moving on here. Marquette, 6.5 goal favorite. I'm sorry, I got to pause. I'm getting stuck up on this. Is Lemoyne in a conference, or are they not in a conference?
They're independent.
They're independent this year. And do they plan? Is there
NEC
NEC talk?
next year?
Okay,
They are.
okay.
They're in the NEC.
Are there other teams that we know are going in the NEC?
Yep.
I'm getting sidetracked. I'm
Yes.
sorry. Okay.
LIU, Sacred Heart.
Really?
Interesting.
I think Bobby Moe might be going back. Not sure.
Okay. Interesting. Merrimack, maybe.
Merrimack is.
Yep. I know UMass football is going to play in the
Maybe UMass Lowell.
Mid-Atlantic. Okay. Interesting. We'll keep an eye on that. Yeah. Just apologize. Just had to check there. We are on Marquette, 6.5 goal favorites at St. Bonaventure. St. Bonnie's played Marquette for the first time last year. They lost 9-5. They are 1-5, but coming off their first win of the year over Canisius, 12-8. Marquette is 3-5 on a 5-game losing streak. Last loss was to Penn State. Vermont at UAlbany. The Danes are 2-goal favorites, 1 p.m. game.
Yeah, Vermont's coming off that win against NJIT. Whether or not they're the villains right now, we don't know. But, that was a game they should have won. Albany is 2-5. They just played Virginia on Tuesday. That was kind of an inevitable loss. But one guy on Albany, Jake Pacino, who we haven't really talked too much about, is an absolute game wrecker. He's going to be a first or second round PLL draft pick. I would expect him to be a first-team All-America pick. So I think they got to save a spot for him on that list. But what he did against Schellenberger and that Virginia offense, he just made plays all over the field. Takeaway checks, transition plays, scoring goals. He is an unbelievable player, and he's a guy that can, almost single-handedly win this game for Albany, right? He's that good. Because of him and everything else that Albany's done this year in their offense, I think Albany's going to win this game at home. They're a gritty team. They're really good on the ground, and I think they're really, really tough. So I think they win this game against UVM.
I think Lars Tiffany said Pacino could be the best player in the country. And Lars Tiffany doesn't just say things like that. He loves lacrosse emotionally. Air Force 10-goal favorites at Lindenwood. Air Force 2-0. To start off their ASON play. Lindenwood the opposite. They're 0-2. I think Air Force, cover or not, they're going to run away with this one. A 2:30 game is Maryland at Michigan, Big Ten matchup. That's one of our games of the week. We'll talk about it later. Drexel at Virginia. The Cavaliers are 10.5 goal favorites. This one's a 3.
I hope Drexel can make this game. I truly do. They might have the ability to do so. Drexel always seems to be a solid team. And if you don't show up against them, they'll make you pay. They've proven that time and time again. They've always been a solid CAA team. They've had the talent to win that conference before. But the problem here is UVA is playing some really, really good lacrosse. They've won 3 in a row. Most impressively, their last win over Maryland by 4. Schellenberger's playing at a Twarton level. He has all the pieces around him that he needs. We already talked about the depth they have. Cormier, Millian, Boyd, and Schultz. just to name a few. Can Drexel slow down UVA? Probably not. I mean, they have the 33rd best scoring defense. Their goalie is the 19th best save percentage in the country at 55%. I don't know what the over is, but probably would take that in this game.
High Point at UNC. Tar Heels are finally back in North Carolina. They're 5.5 goal favorites in this one. This one's at 3:00.
Yeah, I think High Point is just one of those teams where you feel like they've won more games than they really have. They're 5-4. A10 play is yet to begin for them. I think this is a great test to see where they really belong in the D1 pool. UNC is 6-2, honestly in a similar boat. Their biggest win coming earlier in the year against Penn, who's really kind of been up and down. The under has been the safe bet for them all year, just waiting for some added velocity to their scoring potential here, but I think this should be actually a really good game.
Holy Cross at Navy. This one's at 3. Navy, as we said earlier, just up and down all season. Hopefully they can right the ship against the Crusaders. LIU, 1.5 goal favorites at Siena. This one's at 3.
Yeah, another big MAC matchup. LIU is 2-0 in the MAC. Siena is 1-1. Siena's a team I talked about in some of our earlier episodes. Is a team that I thought could run through the MAC. I no longer think that's the case, but I do think that they're a good team, and I think that this is a must-win game for them if they want to make a run at the MAC championship. LIU is 5-1 on the year. They're a good team. Siena's at 3-4. They just beat VMI, who's a good team. I think LIU wins this. I think they're a top 2 or 3 team in the MAC this year.
UMass Lowell at Bryant, American East matchup. Both teams looking for their first conference win, both 0-1 in the conference. Bryant will likely smack them. Bucknell at Lehigh. Lehigh 5.5 goal favorites. This one's at 3:30.
Bucknell's a team, we got real high on early. They just showed some good signs. They beat Dartmouth, but they've really been heading in the wrong direction. They have dropped 3 in a row, and they just got absolutely walloped by Colgate 17-9 to open up Patriot League play. Lehigh might not be sitting at the record they envisioned thus far. They're 3-4. But as Dan mentioned, records outside of conference play do not matter. They are 1-1 in Patriot League, and they have a win over Navy, 12-10, who, as we know, just recently upset the Blue Jays at Homewood Field. Bucknell has enough talent to beat Lehigh. They just do. They have talented pieces if they come to play. Bucknell is also 13-10 all-time against Lehigh, and the Patriot League is one of those conferences that it's just up in the air, man. So this could be a really tight contest. You may watch Bucknell upset Lehigh.
Next game, Syracuse, 10 goal favorites at Hobart in the Krause-Simmons Trophy game, 5:00 Saturday. Mike, you want to go first or me?
I'm just going to say this, boys. To all the guys listening out there, to any Hobart fans out there, nobody thinks you're going to win this game. Nobody outside of the people in that locker room, and I hope all the men in that locker room think you're going to win this game. No hosts on these podcasts think you're going to win this game. You take that as you will and internalize that, because if you do win, it's going to be a goddamn party for the rest of the year, man. That's all I know.
Yep. The fist throwers, there's so much tradition behind this game. Syracuse coming off a big win tonight or Wednesday against Duke. Yeah, fellas, Mike said it. Just from my experience there, I'll say this. As a statesman, your success in your career is measured by a few things. One of those is the results of the Krause-Simmons Trophy game, the Cornell games, your conference success. And for just some reason, there's so much that goes into the Syracuse game mentally and just thinking about it because of what comes with it. And it's impossible it's impossible to not think about it a lot for good or bad. And in my time there, we were never able to overcome this mental struggle of how do we deal with this game. So statesman, just like Mike said, all that matters is whoever's in that locker room, what you guys believe in. No one else is going to do it besides you boys.
We'll be watching.
We will be watching.
Good luck out there, gentlemen.
Yep. Georgetown at Richmond. Richmond 1.5 goal favorites. This one's at 6 p.m.
Yeah, this is a great game. Two teams that I think are kind of in similar positions. Richmond's 5-3, Georgetown's 5-2. Two teams that are extremely talented, have firepower. Richmond with Dalton Young and Aiden O'Neill and Lance Madonna and a whole other cohort of guys. Georgetown, a team with Aiden Carroll, who's playing at a very high level. Alex Vardaro, who might have been the best transfer portal get for them. Two teams with tons of talent and are in similar positions where, they have the capability to beat some of these these great teams as Georgetown did against Notre Dame. But teams that are kind of like an afterthought to the top 10. So this is going to be a great game. Georgetown's on a 5-game win streak. Since their week 2 loss to Hopkins, they've beaten Penn, Notre Dame, Brown, High Point, and Dartmouth. So they're rolling right now. Richmond is extremely talented. They just lost to Duke. But this is going to be a great game. I have no idea who's going to win this one.
Detroit Mercy at Utah. The Utes 9.5 goal favorites. This one's at 8 o'clock Saturday night. Utah just coming off a tough conference loss to Air Force. Detroit Mercy just went to overtime with Robert Morris. The midweek game this week should be a good one. I think the Utes will run away with it. Moving on to Sunday, March 24th. Some good games today. Denver, Duke. It's one of our games of the week. We'll cover that later. What's not one of our games of the week we'll talk about now. Penn State, 3-goal favorites at Ohio State. This one's at 2:30 on Sunday.
Ohio State has yet to prove they can win a big game. They just haven't all year. But this is conference play. We've been saying it all day. This is conference play, and would be the best time to have a win. They have the 9th best scoring defense in the nation. They got the likes of Big Tasty, Marcus Hudgens, Bobby Van Buren holding down the fort. Penn State has also looked poised to return Memorial Day weekend. We've been saying that for the past couple of weeks because they've been on a 6-game win streak. They just beat Marquette 13-7. They have wins over the likes of Cornell, Navy, and Yale, to name a few. Penn State is the 9th best scoring offense, led by senior attackman T.J. Malone, so that'll be fun to watch. 9th best scoring defense, 9th best scoring offense. Penn State starts off conference play 1-0, and I think they're going to take this one too.
Last game Sunday, one of our games of the week we'll talk about later. Hopkins at Rutgers, Big Ten game. That one's at 4:30, and then some good week games too. We'll kind of breeze through. Monday, March 25th, Villanova at Brown, Drexel at Hampton. Tuesday, March 26th, Lemoyne at Yale. Wednesday, March 27th, Canisius at Siena, Cleveland State at Jacksonville. Some conference games here. VMI at Mount, BU at Duke. Pause here for a sec. Anything there, Hades?
Yeah, I think this is a spring break trip for BU. I have a hard time seeing them beat this Duke team. I know we just watched Duke score 4 goals against Syracuse, but like they do after losses, they come out with an absolute vengeance. I think there's going to be a little reworking of the locker room and the culture there. I think Danowski's going to rip into him. I think Duke is going to put on a show against BU.
And BU knows that it's going to come down to if they win the Patriot League. That's their postseason hopes. Last games on Wednesday here. LIU at Wagner, Quinnipiac at Manhattan, Marist at Sacred Heart. This brings us to our D3 rundown. Before we provide this, I want to remind you guys, please like and follow the podcast on Spotify. Hayden, Brett, take it away.
Go for it, Brett. Brett's going to do the rundown of the games and the scores this week. I will provide my analysis. Apparently, I was taking too long with it, which, Brett, go ahead.
We all have our strengths, Hayden. D3 rundown. Tuesday, Bowdoin 22, MIT 14. We had the Mustang Classic held. St. Lawrence in overtime over York, 9-8. Christopher Newport, 17. Dickinson, 9. RIT with 15 goals. Washington Lee with 9. Tufts, 19. Hamilton, 12. And Lynchburg, 15. Stevenson, 9. The second day of the Mustang Classic on Saturday. Dickinson, 11. York, 8. St. Lawrence again in overtime over Christopher Newport, 13-12. Hamilton 16, Lynchburg 15 in a close one, RIT 16, Tufts 11, and Stevenson 10, Washington Lee 9. Other notable games were Middlebury 17, Bates 10, Gettysburg 13, Denison 7, Middlebury 9, Union 11 in Sparks, Maryland, Gettysburg 9 at Amherst 8, and RPI 16, Williams 8.
Thanks, Brett, for those scores. That was speedy. The the Mustang Classic was the premier event of the weekend. Just a great event for Division III. Some great teams, some great finishes, a great broadcast, and some really, crazy scores coming out of that weekend that really had a big effect on the national rankings. So as it stands right now, Salisbury is number 1, RIT is number 2, and Tufts is still number 3. At number 4, St. Lawrence moves into that spot, which is a big moment for their program, probably the highest ranking they've had since 2016 in that Final Four run that they went on. So really a testimony to Mike Mahoney and his team and some of the guys that they have, including Judge Murphy, who was just named the USILA Player of the Week. He had an unbelievable weekend. Really led slew to those 2 wins against CNU and York, which were huge wins for the program. So they are deserving of that number 4 spot. A couple other Liberty League teams in that top 8 with RPI at number 5 and Union at number 8. Union just played Middlebury tonight in Sparks, Maryland at the U.S. Lacrosse headquarters. So they might move up a spot or 2, but that's a big win for Union. That Middlebury game is always a tough game on the schedule. It's been pretty even in years past. So, a huge win against a very good Middlebury team that's ranked a little bit lower than how good they actually are. With all these teams and all these Liberty League teams in the top 8, I am biased, but I think you could make an argument that the top 5 teams in the country right now are Salisbury, and then the next 4 are Liberty League teams in RIT, RPI, St. Lawrence, and Union. All those teams are undefeated. It's been an unbelievable start for the Liberty League this far. So we're gearing up for some very important and exciting Liberty League in-conference matchups. The Liberty League tournament's going to be crazy, but the regular season is going to be unbelievable as well. I know SLU plays Union, in the coming weeks, which is always a great game. Brett and I have had the privilege of playing in that game, and we can both attest that that's always a battle, no matter the record of the team. But this year it's 2 top 5 teams maybe playing, which is going to be great. So as I said, 4 Liberty League teams in the top 8, 1 NESCAC team. I think Liberty League is really dominating the Division III landscape right now, but obviously some huge conference games where these teams are going to beat each other up a little bit. So very excited to keep following along with the Liberty League and the NESCAC and some of these other Southern conferences. It's going to be a great Division III year going forward.
Dan, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me on. I'm pumped to be here.
Yeah, we're pumped to have you and hear about some of your analysis. So we have you here for the games of the week. Some awesome games coming up, some in-conference matchups that we're really looking forward to. But before we do that, I want to give you the chance just to talk about your experience in lacrosse media. I think obviously way more people who know who you are than they know who we are, that's for sure. But a lot of people have probably seen your name on Twitter, on social. So it would be cool to kind of hear your story a little bit and how you got into this space and how you've been so successful in it.
Yeah, well, it's been something of a long ride to get to today. So I guess to really think about the way it starts is to think about how I kind of got to lacrosse in the first place. I grew up in Connecticut, where I still live. I grew up in a town called New Canaan, where I grew up playing lacrosse there.
Oh yeah,
in high school.
We know those jamborees. Some great jamborees there.
That's right. Yeah, the old Saks Middle School fields that are still. I'm sure it's whatever. It's almost 9:30 at night, but I would bet that there's a game going on one of those fields right now. But yeah, so I grew up in New Canaan, and then I played through high school and into college a little bit, and then after kind of in my early 20s, as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I knew I still loved lacrosse, so I tried to stay attached to it, and I got involved with coaching in New Canaan, where I grew up. So I was coaching some youth lacrosse there for a while. Mm-hmm. That kind of led me to the club lacrosse scene was nothing like what it is now. I'm dating myself here, but club lacrosse basically was in its infancy, especially in Connecticut. There wasn't really a club yet. And then a coach from Darien named Jeff Braymeyer started something called Connecticut Chargers. and he was looking for people to help him coach some teams for their first or second summer. And so I jumped at that opportunity, and I coached for Jeff for a summer. And then Coach B asked me at the end of one of my summers there, what I was doing next spring, said he needed some help with his freshman team in Darien. So I went and I jumped at that. I helped out with his freshman team, and then went from that to kind of spending. Ultimately, I spent about 7 or 8 years on the sidelines in Darien, which is one of the most, one of the top kind of high school lacrosse programs in America.
Absolutely.
Which is certainly among public schools. So I was coaching the freshmen there for a little bit. I was the head JV coach for a while, spent some time as a varsity assistant, and, basically we just kept doing that like crazy. But anybody who's been involved in coaching, it sounds like you guys do some coaching. I'm sure you know that nobody who coaches lacrosse does it because the money is great. And I was at a point in my life where I wanted to start getting ready to, looking to get married and start my own family and that kind of stuff. So I kind of left the coaching thing behind for a little while, but I wanted to keep lacrosse in my life. So I got involved with journalism locally, just like covering lacrosse, covering sports, covering whatever I could for our local newspapers in the area here. And then from there, I just found myself like falling in love with writing about lacrosse and taking a more critical and analytical eye to it. So I reached out to some folks at IL at Inside Lacrosse. I reached out to Chris, to Jazz at College Cross at the time. I said, I've been around the game forever. I love writing about it. I love covering it. I live in the Northeast. Do you guys have a need or a want for somebody else to write about lacrosse for you? And Chris was good enough to let me write basically once a week kind of little, 800 words, 1,000 words kind of thing that would show up as kind of like a takeaways from the weekend. And the IL guys said I could basically save them trips to the Northeast and cover Yale games, cover Army games and stuff like that for them. So started out by doing that. And in the course of doing that, my network just kind of grew and grew. I met more and more people. And as you kind of hit fast forward over the course of the next several years, it's been a long time now. I was lucky enough to like break a piece of news or two. And I think that's how some people kind of came to know me a little bit. But it all kind of parlayed into social media and continuing to just kind of write and talk about and watch as much lacrosse as I could. And, in the course of doing that, you spend a lot of time around the game. You meet a lot of really cool and really exciting and interesting people who, there's a lot of people around the lacrosse world who are serious about, trying to find people to cover it and have it be successful and kind of bring, a serious conversation to the sport sometimes. And I try and do that. I try and have, obviously, I try and be lighthearted about it too. But basically what I kind of set out to do was, and this was particularly true once the PLL kind of arrived on the scene, was I wanted to try and bring a more objective, independent, and critical lens to the way the sport was covered. So
yes.
I wanted to try and be like a man without a country who was not, you don't have to worry that somebody's paying me to do this or say this, or I'm worried about the way my relationship is going to go or this or that. I wanted to just kind of be like, this is the way I see it. This is the way I think the players playing the game see it.
Right.
And this is the way maybe some coaches see it. And not everybody maybe feels that they're in a position to put that kind of thing out there, but I wanted to be the guy who could, or wasn't gonna, so I still kind of strive to be as independent as I can be. That's kind of what led me to the Sticks and Lacrosse thing, which is what I do now with, the Sticks and podcast and the site and everything. And I try and be, as I said, kind of like man without a country who's not necessarily trying to just make sure I get high fives from the bigwigs in lacrosse all the time, but I want them to at least kind of respect my approach to it. So, I had somebody I talked to a lot about this kind of thing who's been doing it longer than I have, but he once told me, he was like, especially when it comes to the pro lacrosse scene, you can have all those guys like you, or you can have them respect what you're doing, but it's really, really hard, basically impossible to do both.
Yep.
You really can't do both of those things.
Yep.
So if you want to have them all like you, it's easy to do. You want to have them all respect what you're doing, and that it's harder, and it's probably a little bit lonelier and maybe not as easy, but it's probably better. So I kind of opted for the latter there, and that's what I try and do now.
Mm-hmm. And
it's a long answer. I apologize for taking so much time.
No, this is why we wanted to talk to you. And I think we align with you in a lot of ways, specifically around the passion for the sport of lacrosse, having an objective view as well on the game and things happening. It feels like specifically for the program, or for the pro game, there's kind of an individual media outlet, whether that's, the PLL's own sources. It's good. We need some objectivity from other people, and we're so lucky to have you involved in the sport, in college, professionally, and we're even luckier to have you on this podcast and to talk about some of these games this week. So we're going to dive right into some of our games of the week. Here are some huge conference tilts in a bunch of great conferences. We're going to start with the Patriot League. This one's Friday night, 6 p.m. at BU. Army, number 1 Army goes there. Huge Patriot League game for both these programs, probably the biggest in a while for both programs being ranked this high. We're going to start on our side, Dan, then we'll swing it over to you. Hayden, I want your take on this game first.
Yeah. I mean, this is a big Patriot League game. Preseason polls had Army at number 1 and BU at number 2, and that's exactly where they sit right now. Army is the number 1 team in the country. BU is unranked at the moment, but they have a lot to prove and have a couple good wins thus far. So Dan, I just kind of want to get your opinion on BU. Are they a team that is capable of winning the Patriot League this year, or at least getting to the championship game and giving Army a run for their money?
The Patriot League it's like this every year. It's a total. It's always open. Right. Anybody can get through the Patriot League. I think coming into the season, I think I ranked BU in the preseason. I think what you've seen kind of from BU at points this year is if things don't go well for them, it's because two things are happening. They're not winning faceoffs, and somebody has landed like a haymaker to them, and they just can't shake it off. Mm-hmm. They can't always kind of rally from the big blow. Bryant kind of played a rougher game with them, a more physical game than they did, and BU didn't handle it super well. And then when they lost to Navy in the second half came out with just like a haymaker bunch of goals. I think they rattled off like 5 goals at a halftime, and they just blitzed BU, and BU just couldn't get their feet back under them.
The faceoffs too, specifically in that game.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So BU's got D'Alto, they've got Perfetto, they've got like a lot of weapons on the offensive end. And I think Pat Morrison is an exceptional close defender who can be an eraser for somebody. But I wouldn't be shocked if BU made this a game just because it's the Patriot League and it's just how these kind of things go. Army last year, they lose that first game to UMass. They win whatever, like 8 straight. They go on some unbelievable winning streak. They lose a heartbreaker to Cornell. And then you're getting into Patriot League play, and it's like, oh, well, it's going to be Army. And then BU hands them a loss. So does that happen again? I don't know. But when you get into these games, these conference games, it's an anything can happen kind of situation.
Especially,
I think I like Army in the game. Especially
in the Patriot League, like you mentioned. We were saying before, like Army was number 1, right? Like looks like the clear number 1, but number 2, there's a toss up there. Like could be BU, could be Navy, right? Could be Lehigh, could be Loyola. They're 0-2 in the conference. Colgate's playing well, right? So that's a toss up. And then you mentioned before Patrick Morrison. I agree. He is a absolute stud. They got Roy Meyer down there as well. Those are 2 All-Americans from last year. And on the other side of the ball, Army, you've CJ Pilot, who's another eraser for the Black Knights. So you have a lot of good defensemen in this game. That's something to watch.
Definitely. Yeah, that's go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
I was going to say, AJ Pilot, I think, is a Schmeiser candidate. I think he's going to take somebody away. What makes this fun for BU or interesting for BU is AJ Pilot's going to take somebody away, but they have the depth of weapons. In their first game of the year against St. Joe's, I think you saw Levi Virch kind of take it to Vince D'Alto a little bit, but I think Perfetto still had like 5, 6, 7 points in that game. Mm-hmm. So they can pivot kind of between those two guys and say, all right, your eraser is over here, we're going to start it from over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're a deadly program. They're so fun to watch. It's hard not to root for them too, just being Army. We're going to move on to an Ivy League game. Yale 1-0. They beat Harvard last week. They're ranked 9th. They're 2-goal favorites at Cornell. Cornell ranked number 11. A bad loss 2 weeks ago that really reeked for Cornell, and you thought, okay, maybe they're not going to figure it out this year. They bounced back and beat Princeton at their place, which is a very tough place to play. And they win in as dramatic fashion as possible. But this is a big one. Yale at Cornell, 12 p.m. What do you guys have?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to preface this, Yale's coming off that big win against Harvard. They won 17-15. Cornell is coming off that big win against Princeton, 15-14. Similar to this Patriot League game we just talked about, Cornell was preseason ranked number 1 in the Ivy. Yale was number 2. It kind of seems like that's flipped a little bit. It kind of seems like Yale has become that team to beat. Both teams are 1-0 in the conference. Cornell got off to a slow start. Yale lost that close game to Penn State, but that's their only blemish. Both teams have played Penn State. Yale played them to OT. Cornell lost by 11. So, if we can use that as a measuring stick of some sorts, I think it tells the tale of the two teams a little bit. So Dan, Cornell had very high hopes coming into this season. Do you think they've met expectations, or they're falling just a little bit short? Obviously a long way to go, but through these first few games, we can kind of tell, what these teams are going to be capable of down the stretch.
Well, I think when you look at Cornell, I think you're kind of getting what you thought you would get, right? Their attack is off the charts good. Like there could be 40 goals in this game. Like there is two teams who do not play a ton of defense. Cornell is getting used to life without Gavin Adler. Chase Erlin is playing for Hopkins now. There's pieces there. There's guys like Jack Fowlers who are good players and everything. But you lose defensive players like the ones Cornell had as the voice, the leaders of their defense. There's going to be some adjusting there, and I think I went and looked. I think Yale's adjusted defensive efficiency right now is 52nd in the country. I think Cornell is just outside of the top 15. This is going to be the way you would expect this game to go is shootout.
You're thinking
I
over.
think to your point about these two teams being the top of the Ivy, I think that is what makes this game the most compelling, because the Ivy tournament this year, the past 2 years, the Ivy tournament's been held at Columbia in New York. This year, the Ivy League tournament is hosted by the team that is the regular season champ.
That's so much better.
You want to have Ivy League tournament in your building, at your school. This is a game that these teams need to win. This feels like an inside track to host the tournament kind of game.
Yeah.
And I think that makes it particularly big for both these schools.
Definitely. And I would say too, just to, I guess, put an opinion on this game, this really could go over either way. And I do agree, Dan, I think it's going to be an absolute shootout. I'm so curious what the over is, but I think the way that in what we saw on Sunday, and I would like to say too, those Sunday games are so awesome. Those are like prime time because nobody's doing anything on Sunday, right? All you got to do is turn on a beautiful lacrosse game, and we got to watch that. And what Sunday showed me about Cornell is they're a tough team, man. They were down big in that game. If you remember watching the first quarter, you're like, Princeton's going to run away with this at home in front of a massive crowd on a beautiful day. And Cornell had a run of their own, stayed in that game, and scored that insane last goal. I think that said a lot about Cornell, and I'm going to take that into this weekend. I think Cornell is going to come on top over Yale.
The Ivy League action we're due for all season. Next game here, Big Ten game. You might not consider a game of the week, but I'm being a little biased here, specifically after what Michigan accomplished last year. Maryland, 3-goal favorites at Michigan. This one's on Saturday at 2:30. Love this game because, again, of what Michigan did last year, but obviously things are a lot different. Michigan's been struggling. They've had some bad losses and some competitive games in their schedule. You think they have a chance of winning, and they're just not getting it done kind of consistently right now. Maryland's likely going to play pretty pissed off after a loss to Virginia Saturday. A lot here and a lot to dissect, and maybe the conversation around who's going to come out of the Big Ten begins this week.
Yeah, I mean, Maryland's 5-2, Michigan's 5-3. I think Maryland has better wins. They've beaten Syracuse, Princeton, and Loyola. They have lost to Notre Dame and Virginia. Those are two humps that they're gonna see again. But Michigan's best wins are against Delaware and Marquette. Delaware is a good team, and Marquette is on paper a good team.
You love Marquette.
I do love Marquette. But, just kind of what we're seeing, I think there's two different calibers here. Maryland is Maryland, and I think Michigan is a program that's growing. They've had some big wins in the last couple of years, and they are growing a following. So I think that makes this game compelling. Another thing is that this game is at Michigan, and per Twitter, they sold out their lacrosse venue. So they added additional seats. I recommended they put it in the big house, which probably would have been a bad idea. But I think the place is going to be packed, and in terms of what could be like the thing that gets Michigan over this hump is maybe a great atmosphere at home with a packed stands, packed people all the way around the field. Maybe that's what it's going to take for them. Dan, I'm curious, your perspective on Michigan. Obviously they had some of that social media drama early on in the season with Coach Kevin Connery saying, the ACC and the Big Ten are different leagues and whatnot.
I loved it. So juicy. So juicy.
Yeah, I think it was good for the sport in a way. But, what have you seen from Michigan this year? Are they a team that can compete for the Big Ten? And are they a team that can make a run in May?
I think the Big Ten is pretty open. I think this, coming into this year, I was interested in Michigan because before this year, Michigan was like kind of the plucky team in the Big Ten where it was like, are they going to put it together this year? Are they going to get there this year? Is the program going to arrive? It's an athletic tradition like you get at Michigan. Is lacrosse going to rise to that level? And last year, it really did. Last year, they beat Maryland in College Park. They beat them in the Big Ten title game. That was like okay, Michigan has arrived. Michigan is here with the big boys now. When that happens, and then this year, you don't get to be the plucky team anymore. Now you have to be like okay, are you really a Big Ten contender team or are you not? Is it just the 1 year? Or are you really a big time program now? And so this year they've had to kind of deal with that. They've got some tough losses in the ACC, like you said, but I think the Big Ten's a battle. I think the fact that they're hosting the game is good for them. When I look at Maryland right now, what I kind of see is a team with a great face-off unit. They're great in net. Obviously, Ajax is a special player. Zapatello is a special player down low. I like their close defense unit a lot. But when I look at the offensive end, I basically see Urksa, maybe Spanos a little bit. But in terms of guys who I know I can give the ball and say, go win your matchup, and they're going to do it, I don't know if it goes that far down the list beyond those guys. Mm-hmm. And, when I look at Maryland and the way they kind of struggle, it's sometimes you get these weird games like the Brown game. You're just like, what's going on? It just doesn't feel like a team that executed well or whatever. And it's weird because we're still talking about a John Tillman coach team here. So Maryland kind of has these games once in a while where I'm like, I guess like the talent I watch on the field, it's great. They're great in net, like I said, but if they're not facing off well, or if McNaney has a tough day out there, then they're as vulnerable as anybody. So I think this is one of the more interesting games of the week for sure. Mm-hmm. I like I honestly would probably like the Terps in it, but like I said, it's Michigan kind of now handling you're not just a plucky underdog anymore. You won the Big Ten last year. Right. You got to play like that now. That's what your program is now. You've arrived, so play like you've arrived.
Right.
So I think you mentioned the stuff with Conway at the beginning of the year. Some of that is kind of part of it. Some of that, there was some weird timing stuff with some of that, but it's a whole other story. But I think Michigan can notch a win they really need at this point. You mentioned their non-con wins. Their best one, like you said. I'm a Marquette guy too. Marquette win's not going to do a lot for you. Yeah. And like Delaware win, I don't know how much that's going to do for you now. So they're in a mode of we need to make some noise in the Big Ten. We need to make some serious noise in the Big Ten tournament if we're trying to play in May. If we're trying to play in the NCAA tournament, we're approaching Michigan's got to start looking at some of these like playoff game atmosphere, like playoff game type lacrosse type stuff. So absolutely, I think that makes it good. I think that makes it a really good game. So I think this is going to be one of the better games of the weekend. Mm-hmm.
And they're likely doing the math right now. They got to make the Big Ten tournament and then win that likely have a chance to compete in May. Another game, and this one's out of conference, unlike a lot of games going forward. Number 5, Denver at Duke, Sunday at 2 p.m. Dan, you just watched Duke against Syracuse for record Wednesday night. That game just wrapped up. Duke looks super underwhelming against the Orange. What'd you see from them?
I mean, I think you saw some of it was Duke not playing great. Maybe they, the turnover numbers, some of them were just kind of ugly. But look, John Odeana deserves a ton of credit. That Q's defense deserves a ton of credit.
Absolutely,
that's as good of a game as a Syracuse defense has played in a long time.
Yep.
Like that was a absolute masterclass on the defensive end. Will Mark was out of his mind good. And if you're Duke, then you just spent the night just getting frustrated by a really good goalie, and Billy Dwan winning his matchup with Brennan, and just it was just one outstanding defensive sequence from Syracuse after another in that game. So
yeah,
I don't know if Denver has a good set of polls. I don't know if they have a goalie as good as Will Mark. I think Cleveland's a good goalie, but I don't want to make it sound like I think they're bad in net, but I don't know if they can walk onto the field expecting to get a performance in net like Will Mark just for Syracuse.
Right.
So, I think Duke Denver is now interesting because, number one, you get Duke off a loss. And the last time we saw Duke off a loss, I believe they absolutely thrashed Princeton the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And
poor Tigers.
Yeah. And so, and if you're the Pios, I think and Denver's only lost, the Yale lost, 2 major deficiencies for them. They got beat badly facing off, and they got pretty roughed up on the ground ball game, outside of just face-off ground balls. Like the 50-50 balls just seem to all go Yale's way in that game. Stathakis bounced back with a good performance next week. I think the way he plays against Naso, who was good to start that Hughes game and then kind of tailed off. Usually his games go the other direction, but the way he plays against Naso will go a long way in this one. But Denver's best win is Hopkins right now, and I think that's a good win. But it's gotten worse in the last 2 weeks as Hopkins has lost twice. Although now again, like Syracuse is changing everybody's resume because the Syracuse loss right now looks pretty good. But
it's been a while.
I think a win in this one for Denver validates them spending that week at number 1. It says we're legit. The Big East is going to bring some teams to the party here come the postseason. It's not just going to be the ACC, song and dance and all that, or ACC and Big Ten and Ivies. The Big East folks, and then obviously the Patriot League folks too. But
right,
this is their way to say we belong in these conversations.
And I just want to ask this too: do you think that Georgetown and Denver? I mean, Denver, of course, but Georgetown, do they still have an at-large chance, you think?
Georgetown has somebody good this weekend, right? They have a good opportunity this weekend.
Richmond.
Georgetown. They have Richmond.
Yeah, it's Richmond.
I don't know if that's going to do it then for you. Georgetown's got the Notre Dame win, so they've got the Penn win. 2 teams out of the Big East is certainly possible. I think this kind of thing always comes down to what does everybody else do. Do we get bid thieves elsewhere? How does the Patriot League shake out? Is that going to be a league with where everybody beats each other up and we wind up with some weird situations in the RPI, or we wind up with a 1-bid Patriot League or a 2-bid Patriot League, or where those extra bids are going to come from is always kind of the interesting question. I think Georgetown, depending on how they get through conference play here, has a chance to certainly have an at-large resume. If they beat Denver in the regular season, I think their at-large resume, even should they lose in the tournament, would be pretty great. They'd have wins over Denver, Notre Dame, Penn. It would be pretty solid.
Right. Selection Sunday would definitely be a lot more interesting, I think, with 2 Big East teams who could make the tournament. It's a larger conversation. Last game of the week here, another Big Ten matchup in Johns Hopkins, who's now 5-3. I think people forget that's their record now. They're 5-3. They're 3-goal favorites at Rutgers, ranked 17th. That one's at Sunday, 4:30. Another Big Ten matchup, of course, here. Rutgers, some big games this year. You watch them play against Army. They lay an egg. Army's also a buzzsaw. But then they win some good games after that against Loyola, forgetting who else right now. But this should be a good contest. Mike, I want to start with you. You've been quiet over there, so I want to know if you have any thoughts on this one before we give it to Hayden and Dan.
I just would like to think, and we already mentioned it, but it's just like you said, like it's so hard to think that Hopkins is 5-3 now. They're really trending downwards, but I mean, this is a Big Ten conference where they win out. They're still at large, regardless if they win the tournament, right? Yep. And Rutgers, I mean, they're just one of those solid teams that they're sitting at 17, but it's like they're a team that can win big games, and it just seems like if they win this game, it's just so important for Rutgers heading into conference play, and if they even want a chance at large, right? So I think that's just my big thing there.
Yeah. I mean, Rutgers is experienced, and with all these schools getting so many transfers, and I think Rutgers being one of the schools that's leading the way in that field. They bring in 10, 12 transfers a year and have a lot of guys who have a lot of experience, on the field, but they don't have a lot of experience playing together in a Rutgers uniform. And I think that's, kind of why we've seen them win games, but not win games by a lot. Dan, I was looking at your spreadsheet earlier, which is a great resource mentioned on the last podcast.
Sure is.
But
gold.
I was looking, and Rutgers is 1-7 against the spread, which to me tells me that they're not beating teams the way that they should. So Rutgers is one of those teams that has so much talent and so much potential, but it's just a matter if they can put it together. And like we've seen them put it together in 2022 when they were in the Final Four, and they had all these guys come together and mesh really well together. And now you kind of got the same scenario here, but it doesn't seem like they're coming together as well as they did a couple years ago. I guess, Dan, a question for you is, obviously every team has guys from the transfer portal, but, Rutgers really, really relies on these guys every year coming in year after year. What have you seen from them, and, what have you seen from this year's group of transfers, and do you think they will be able to put it together?
I think when I look at Rutgers, you mentioned obviously there's the portal guys, and there are other schools too that are aggressive in the portal. Georgetown in the past has been a team that's been aggressive in the portal. We saw it particularly last year, and they kind of followed that same trajectory kind of that you're talking about with Rutgers here. Where early in the year, Georgetown, despite having Minikis and Dordovic and these portal guys, all these weapons came and kind of changed up their offense. It took them a little while to actually, turn that into wins. They struggled to start the year.
Yep.
I think they made it into March before they won a game a year ago. But Georgetown has a guy like Graham Bundy, who's been like a first-team All-American and is just the steady guy who's always there. And with Rutgers, I think you have Ross Scott, who's that guy, who's just like, he's going to be at X. He's going to be the guy who runs your offense. He's going to be your top dodger, regardless of how the portal goes. And, he's a guy you're going to rely on when you need a goal late. You know what's going through Ross. So he's always going to be there as that guy. And they still do manage to recruit pretty well. They brought in a great goalie from the portal, from D3, from Hamilton. Seamus Fagan's there, was a D3 goalie of the year. And the guy who's getting the start in net for them is a redshirt freshman. So, there is Stoller, who's been awesome.
Yep.
So, they're finding kind of the right mix, and they're getting guys kind of comfortable. But, Rutgers' best win right now, it might even be their UMass win from a week ago. Mm-hmm. So they need some resume building right now. In terms of non-con, obviously that can't happen. We're in a Big Ten play, but this is a big opportunity for sure. You mentioned the spreadsheet. Also on that for Rutgers is that they have gone under in 6 straight, which is weird to think about for a Rutgers team.
Interesting.
Like Rutgers is like, NASCAR, run, get up and down, play, run and gun, score.
Yep.
And they've been under in 6 in a row. They get some decently high totals, but like they just keep going under. And it's interesting that happens to them. So, I think I kind of think Rutgers is, to your point about transfers and putting it together, at the end of the day with Rutgers on offense, it still basically starts and stops with me, with Ross Scott, with Shane Knobloch, with guys who have been there. Mm-hmm. Those are still going to be the guys who I think are their best dodgers, their best party starters. So, I think it really comes down to those guys kind of leading the way. And then, if they can be successful facing off with Brahms, who's a portal guy from Utah, then, you'd think that maybe they'll have a chance to do a little bit of make it, take it. But Their defense holding up against Hopkins is tough. Hopkins runs, 10 guys deep on offense. It's tough to handle them.
Yep. We're excited for that one. And to Seamus Fagan, shout out, buddy, another LS guy, Dan, and as well as Peter Rosati, who's actually a transfer. He broke his ankle in a scrimmage early in the year. I talked to him a couple months ago. I think he's close to coming back. Not sure how his recovery process is going, but I have a feeling he'll get on the field right away defensively for Rutgers when he is back. But Dan, we're so lucky to have you join the show. Awesome analysis. I think I feel like a bit of a child, honestly, talking about some of these games with you because you're a wizard and you know all this stuff. Seriously, no, it's a privilege for us and hopefully a privilege for our listeners as well. We really appreciate it, Dan, and hope you enjoy the games this weekend.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. I've been listening the last couple of weeks and everything, so been appreciate what you guys are doing. And thank you again for reaching out and for having me on. And
go listen to Dan's podcast, Sticks In, if you haven't yet. It's on Spotify. Is it on Apple as well, Dan?
It is wherever you get podcasts. Yeah, it's whatever platform you like to listen on. It is there.
Awesome. We can't say that yet because we have not quite figured it out with Apple, but we'll give them a call right after this. Dan, we really appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Please remember to like and follow us on Spotify, also on social media. College Lacrosse Game Day on Instagram, Lacrosse Game Day on Twitter. Please send us videos if you're going to any of these games. We'd love to share them and get people as fired up for lacrosse games as we are. Thanks so much.
Holden getting underneath. Maltz, great catch by Bernhardt. Score! Hello, highlight reel.
Play like a champion today.